Hey guys, Youngblood with you for the 40th episode of the Inbox, which is crazy to think that we've been doing this series that long, but it is a lot of fun, so we're going to keep on doing it. So the first one today is from Alejo Ruiz Kamauer, who says, how do you think CIG will be able to remove all the clutter from the mission scheduler when the game comes out? With all the missions that you'll have available, wouldn't it be hard to keep everything clear? There is going to be a lot of things that you can do, but I think one thing that you need to keep in mind with what we see in game right now is the fact that we're very limited in what we have available to us. So I think the developers are really trying to point us towards missions that we can do at the moment. When we get into the persistent universe, you're going to have other things available to you, like the ability to go out and purchase cargo on your own, and take it and sell it somewhere else. That's not going to be a mission in itself. That's going to be like a player-created task, if you will. So there's not necessarily going to be this huge abundance of missions that are necessarily needing to be right in our face. And then I think in that Gamescom demonstration that we saw, there's going to be probably some things that you're going to be able to do. Like you may fly to Levski, for example, and it might say, I don't remember the guy's name, but like Bill Jones has maybe a job available for you. And then you go and talk to Bill and he could present you with something. And it's going to happen a little bit more organically. So I think you're going to see some things like what we have in place today, a mission system. But it's probably going to be one, more organized. And two, I think there's going to be a lot of things that just pop up based on your actions. If you complete, a lot of cargo missions, for example, you may start being presented with opportunities to take on other jobs. Elite Dangerous had an interesting system in where you landed at a station and there was a job board at that station and you could choose to take on different missions there. It wasn't always necessarily present right in front of your face. So you may look at your Moby Glass and it may say go to Orion Station, and Orion Station is going to have jobs available. So you may not know what they are until you actually get there. There's a couple different ways that they could go about really trying to make it what they want it to be, but it should feel like a very natural experience. So I don't think the cluttered environment that you see right now is what the end goal is going to be. I think it's, one, going to be organized better, and two, you're going to be presented with that information in different ways. Josh VS Gaming says, do you think that boarding ships could rip open the hull and board, or just getting through airlocks? So it's an interesting question. I think airlocks is going to be the most natural way to get on board ships. We have heard the developers talk about how stations and larger ships are going to have areas that are considered to be a little bit more vulnerable. So if that really ends up being the case, then I think you have to assume that you can either stick a C4 satchel on the side and blow it open, or you can, hit it with torpedoes, or you might be able to cut into it. It's been quite a while at this point, but I did a video analyzing what looked to be a Vanduul boarding pod, and what it really looked like to me was that there's almost these teeth that could probably project into the ship and potentially even spin to cut a hole. We haven't seen anything on that ship in a really long time. I never got confirmation if I was right or wrong, but it seemed like a very plausible thing. So there's going to be interesting ways. We know there's going to be places that are easier to get in and harder to get in that are not airlocks. So there's going to be a mechanic in place. It's just a question of what that's really going to look like. Are you able to actually fly a reclaimer up and use the giant claw to rip a hole in the side of the space station or an enemy ship and actually get in there? Maybe. I don't know. It kind of depends on how powerful that claw really ends up being. But theoretically, there should be other options available there. Now, Elfwin put in a comment here, and it's not necessarily a question, but we got some information today that I thought was interesting to talk about. He says, while in Quantum, it is likely that players are going to be in a place between instances, where the Galaxy server is simulating all players at a slower pace. I doubt that the interaction in Quantum will be possible, not even taking into account the insane speeds. And when I was talking about this topic, I kind of mentioned that as well. As far as the speeds go, it's going to be really hard to, shoot somebody out of Quantum, and that's why I thought maybe like a bubble interdiction system might be in place. The information that just came out, and actually was in Gamescom, somebody dug it out of an interview, was that a freelancer is going to go faster in Quantum than a Starfarer. So what that means is that we're going to start seeing different speeds of ships that are capable of going through Quantum. So maybe a ship like the Buccaneer, one that we know is supposed to eventually get an interdiction weapon, or at least have the option to equip one, it may end up being really fast in quantum. It's probably going to have a shorter range, and that may be the sacrifice and the balance that they put into the game. But what we may end up seeing is like a Buccaneer can go faster than almost any other ship in quantum, and then that's going to allow you to catch up to enemy ships and also knock them out based on whatever that interdiction tool is. That's a bit of speculation on my point there. I know we can take what Chris Roberts said there and kind of extrapolate based on that, but it is an interesting thought. Another thing is, if we know that there's different speeds, we may be thinking to ourselves, okay, it's still going to be hard to actually catch the other ship regardless of, if you're faster. But we're also in a very small test bed right now. We're really jumping around one planet and some moons. So when we start talking about an entire system, ships are going to be in quantum for way longer than we are today. And if we've got mechanics that allow you to catch other ships and actually knock them out, I think we're going to start seeing some interesting interdiction options coming pretty soon. Field Smith says, questions for STLYoungblood. The first one is, do you think it would be possible to put traps inside shipping containers? I own a whole E, and I think it would be an effective target against pirates to have traps inside my specialized smuggling containers. By the time they check to see what's inside it, it will be too late. I don't think there's going to really be arbitrary restrictions on what you can put in there. So if you want to put in some, like, Banu, wild tiger type creature, that would be an interesting trap. You could potentially put C4 in there. We know that some ships are going to have internal defenses inside that maybe like auto turrets. You might be able to put just high explosives in there on timers. I don't necessarily think you're going to see like remote controlled detonations to where you're sitting there like you get taken hostage and on your Mobi-Glass you have the ability to detonate it. I don't think that's probably going to be in game. But you may have the option to rig something to where it opens and it blows. That's the type of gameplay that I could totally see CIG putting into the game. Now, I don't think it's going to be like a super dangerous or high risk thing. I bet you're able to scan it and tell if there's something dangerous inside, or maybe even like a person that's trying to like smuggle. The question though is going to be how careless is the enemy going to be when trying to actually get into it? If they're not paying attention, they're just ripping into it to see what's there, then I could see you getting away with a kind of a scheme like that. But I'm going to go ahead and guess that, that's going to be a lesson that every pirate has to learn once, and then they're going to scan if this is a possibility in the game. Field also asked another question that's basically the same one that Bill asked, and that was, do you think multi-ship jumps will be possible, where you have a starfarer and escort ships as one to protect, and how could it be done? And then Field also mentions, I want to be able to jump in together. He knows that we can match speed already, but what about quantum travel through charted jump points? I think that's going to be a possibility. I don't think you're going to be able to send a 1,000-person fleet through at the exact same time. I think that's probably going to be more like a daisy chain type of situation. But I think what we are going to see is you're going to be limited based on the size of the jump point. You can probably slave your ship's systems together to a point to where they all work at the same time. So, you could potentially have a Starfarer and two Gladiuses that jump through a large jump point at the same time. Now, if you're talking about, let's say a Constellation can fit through a medium-sized jump point, but it is really big in that medium-sized jump point. Or maybe a Carrack's a better example since it's a bigger ship. You're probably not going to end up in a situation to where if your biggest ship is going to fill that jump, you're not going to be able to get fighters in there as well at the same time. So I think that's going to be the restriction that we see, as well as whatever they put in as far as gameplay-wise to allow your ships to communicate. But from a command and control standpoint, there's going to be some communication between ships anyways. And knowing that people want to stick together and end up in the same instance, it almost seems like it would behoove them to allow players to jump together because it makes the system work a little bit less hard to keep them all together. Old Friend says, does anyone know if voice chat can or will be used in the place of text chat? I.e., instead of typing in local, set your radio to short range and hail all local players. I find the idea much more immersive than typing in chat boxes. Voice is coming. It's part of the Organization 2.0 rework, and I think that name has actually been dropped at this point. It is going to be coming. I think we're supposed to see the first iteration of it in 2.6, but if it's not in 2.6, I'd say 3.0 is a very good time to have it in. In something like, Star Marine, it's going to be helpful to be able to talk with your team, and I think that's probably a good time to slide it in. I'm just hoping we get the same type of mechanics in place that are going to allow you to kind of control and like mute and do, all those types of things with the audio, because there's always going to be somebody annoying when you have voice chat up. And our last two questions are patron questions. This one's from Shepard. Says, I've been playing for a little over a year now, and I have many suggestions. One such suggestion is regards to a vehicle weight and how it's conveyed to the player. I have many ships, some fighters and some larger, such as the Aquila. In the situation of takeoff and landing, both ships behave the same. This annoys me a little as it feels the mass of the ships do not match the physics. I would love to see larger ships take off a little bit slower, with perhaps a rumble of the engines and shaking of the ship. Small ships will be able to take off quicker and feel more agile. Are there any plans to create this effect? I honestly don't know if there's plans to do this or not. And I agree with you. I think once ships get airborne, you shouldn't necessarily have that same feeling. Now, larger ships should obviously drift a little bit more. They're inheriting more of that momentum and inertia. But I think as far as landing and takeoff, I think those are situations to where that mass should really feel a little bit more present, even in space. Now, I think that's more of a environmental effect, and I think once we start talking about planet side, Roberts has already said that, a ship like a Gladius that's actually more like airplane is going to fly better in the atmosphere than something like a Freelancer or an Aurora. So I think those are things we're going to see, and I think we're going to probably get a little bit more of that feel of the ships as we kind of get developed a little bit further. But as far as space is concerned, honestly, I don't understand the physics of that all well enough to really give you a good answer on that. So I'm going to kind of open that up to the community here. So feel free to chat in, get some science behind it or just your opinions, because I'd love to know what everybody thinks. Because I think from a feel perspective, it makes sense to have a little bit more oomph to the ship and make it sound like it's working a little bit harder. But then again, you also get some really big ships today, and they get correspondingly larger components. And based on that, it doesn't feel like it's really struggling. Chef, one of the patrons in our Discord channel, mentioned, I'm pretty sure it was Chef, mentioned that a 747 doesn't really struggle to get off the ground, but sometimes like a little biplane or something like that can seem like it's really working to get up in the air. So, if you look at those, it's a huge difference in the size and the power of the ships, but they behave almost opposite of what you would expect. So, again, community weigh in there, because I don't know enough about the science there to really say one way or another. And the last question is from John. It says that the idea of owning a spaceship, let alone one that I could fly, just blew my mind. I just went hog wild. I've managed to acquire several ships, from the Aurora to a Reclaimer. With all these ships eventually in hangar, when do the cost associated with these ships start to be a factor? What will it cost me to have an Orion sitting around waiting to be used? I have a Freelancer Dur. I would like nothing better than to fit it out for the long haul, head out to the second star to the right, and fly straight until morning. What will I need? So I guess before we get too much further here, the cost with the ships are going to start the second you start using them. And primarily what I mean with that is everything you do is going to cost. You're going to have to repair your ship, you're going to have to refuel your ship, you're going to have to rearm your ship, you're going to have to pay if you have crewmen to be on your ship. So you need to make money to pay for those ongoing bills. Now, as far as the actual hangars are concerned, I'm pretty sure the way this is going to work out is you're going to get at least one, I don't want to call it free hangar, but I think you're not going to necessarily see hangar fees. Now, there was a stretch goal, I believe it was, that was going to be, if you backed before a certain point, you weren't going to have the hangar fees. If you backed after that, you were going to have to pay hangar fees. I think I've seen that walked back a little bit, so I'm not sure where CIG is on this right now, and this has been something I've talked about a little bit before, too. If you've got multiple packages, can you set up a hangar in Terra and a hangar in Sol and a hangar in, Magnus? Maybe, but I think you're probably paying for anything outside of your first one. As far as actually just flying and getting straight out there, you also say, what weapons, power plant, engines, and shield upgrades do I need to consider? How do I supply that Freelancer to test the limits of the persistent universe? Those are going to be things that are going to depend on what you're wanting to do. Based on saying that you're going to want to just fly to the second star to the right until morning, you're going to want something that's very efficient. And that's something that the Dur is already going to have. But I think most of what we're going to see is some pretty baseline equipment on our ships, because that gives you the option to upgrade. So if you are wanting to get to that second star as fast as possible, you may want to scrap the fuel efficiency in regards for power. But that's probably not what you want on an exploration ship. As far as shield upgrades go, you may want to consider less shielding for better scanners. If a better scanner uses more power, you may need to sacrifice somewhere. And if you're exploring, you're probably not doing a lot of combat. So maybe sacrificing on a lower power shield could be something that you would want to consider. But all of those are going to be, what do you want to do, and then picking the right loadout for your ship based on that situation. You want to know, could you do it in Economy? Yes. Do you have enough game packs to crew Economy with my NPCs? Perfect. That's going to be a really good option for you. Now, you're still going to have to pay those NPCs in some way, but having them there is going to make things very easy for you, and they're going to get skill, kind of increased skill levels by actually using them. And then, as far as will they be ranked in skills according to its training, we don't know yet. They're going to be more proficient the more they're used. They're going to kind of just increase, and you can kind of just say they're being trained as they do the jobs. You can also go out and hire NPCs that are going to be better skilled right from the beginning. And then you say, how do I pay for the upgrades that my fleet may need? How do I keep my fleet safe? So basically, as far as the payment goes, everything you do in the game is an opportunity to earn money. So if you are, an explorer, if you find a derelict ship, you could store that information and sell it to somebody else later. If you find a minefield, or not a minefield, like an asteroid field to do mining, you could either sell that location, or you could end up going back with a mining ship of your own and actually collecting money there. Combat, you could do bounty hunting, you could do escort missions, you can do mercenary stuff. As far as if you have a starfarer, you could do refueling. Everything you do is an opportunity to earn money. You could also just take on missions. You could say, I'm going to turret gun for this guy's constellation. So that's how you're going to earn the money. As far as keeping your fleet safe, it's going to either be 1, planning ahead, 2, hiring escorts if you don't have them, or 3, putting an NPC in an escort ship to bring with you, or just fly with the organization and they'll help to keep you safe. But as far as what do we do with our ships on day 1, if you'd rather be exploring than shooting at other ships, just go. Jump in your ship, get out, fly around, scan everything you possibly can. Learn the lessons that you can from the experiences that you take on. You're going to realize that some things are going to make you a better explorer than others, and you're going to find that certain activities are going to find you more things. Yeah, a lot of people are probably going to jump out on day 1 and try and find a jump point because it's going to be a harder thing to do, and getting that first one's going to be kind of cool, but you're probably going to be missing out on a lot of little things along the way if that's your sole focus. So, just kind of take into account everything that you can, scan everything that you can, retain all the information that you can, and then the key is, what do you do with that information? And then you're either going to sell it or use it to your own advantage. So that's going to be it for this episode of The Inbox. If you guys have questions, please get them in. I appreciate you all watching. Have yourselves a wonderful day, and take care.